Good evening, everybody, and what a gorgeous evening it is. It's now in the middle of May 2024, and it's amazing what just a little bit of sunshine and some rain does to waken everything up. We have got so much growth starting on all these vines here, which is absolutely superb. But it does mean that we've got quite a lot of work to do. But anyway, that's part of having a vineyard, isn't it, I guess? Incidentally, just with a little bit of rain and sunshine, all of a sudden you get these buds that start to form. These aren't bunches of grapes or anything like that just yet. From here, you're going to get all these lovely flowers. They're quite a sort of furry flower that will come from there. And the reason why you don't get nice sort of floral petals and things like that on vines is because essentially they self-pollinate. They don't need insects necessarily to pollinate because they do it themselves. So these will eventually turn into flowers and then into hopefully into grapes. Although strictly speaking, that's not the subject of this video. As from the title, you can probably guess that not everything goes according to plan in a vineyard. We've had a few problems, and I thought it's only fair just to highlight those for you as well. So the first problem is wildlife. I did a video before on how we've attempted to keep wildlife out of the vineyard, and in particular deer, because just behind me here we've got a whole load of foresty trees, and in there lurk all sorts of deer, and we really want to keep those out because if they ever got in, oh god, it would be a disaster, to be honest. So in a previous video I showed the sort of netting that we put up. They're 8 foot posts, but driven in, so we're about, I don't know, about 6 foot tall, something like that, and a sort of polypropylene netting. It's quite flexible. It's held up quite well. This has been up for 3 years now, and somebody in a previous video said that there's no way that's going to keep deer out. They're just going to push through it and shoulder barge it and get in somehow. Well, fortunately, that's never happened, touch wood. And so I'm quite pleased at how it stood up, and yeah, that's not been too bad. But we have had a bit of a shoulder barge, which is perhaps not surprising to the person who made the comment. I'll just show you that quickly. This post here has been pushed over, and it's now leaning backwards. So we're going to have to replace that one if it's snapped off at the bottom. And it's a constant check to try and make sure that the perimeter fence is sound. So that's the first thing that's not, well, it has gone okay, but it's a constant vigil as to making sure that sheep and deer in particular don't get in. The next thing we've struggled with, to be honest, is our British weather. It's been absolutely awful these last 2 years. It's gone from extreme heat, you know, sort of, well, extreme for us anyway, 40 plus degrees during the summer, which is just way too hot without proper irrigation for our vines. And then the following year, it's been no sunshine at all for most of the summer. So it's just been awful for newly established vines. So you have some vines that haven't really done very well at all, like this one. And in my experience, if this fails again this year, it will struggle to come alive the following year. But then across here, you've got a vine that's done really well. It's even actually trying to push out some buds there. So it's still quite weedy. It's a good thing it survived the winter, to be honest, but we'll probably snip this one at the fruiting line so that all the energy can just go into making this much fatter and thicker so it can survive another winter. And we've had a few disasters. We've had a few that have died, just didn't make it over the winter. You can see now why it's important to get a vine that's about a pencil's thickness before winter time, because it's just going to freeze or just die essentially. It's just not going to survive the winter. So it's all really important to get that first year vine about pencil thickness, which is about 8 millimeters there or thereabouts, before winter comes along, and then you stand a huge chance, or much greater chance, of that vine surviving the cold snaps that we get. So yeah, the new vines that we put in, yeah, they're okay on the whole. They're not too bad. The older vines, the ones which are now 4 years old, are really going to, I think, be the first year that we can make proper wine from them. They always say about 3-4 years is how long it takes for a wine vine to get established to the point that it can actually produce proper grapes for winemaking. So we're in that year now. So I'm really hoping that we can get some good yields this year. The third problem that we have to constantly try and address is mold. Vines just seem to get mold all the time, to be honest, and mildew is the main one. Black rot is another one. There's all sorts of different molds that they're susceptible to, and so it's a constant program of spraying the vines with a fungicide, and trying to get the right formulation and the right frequency and everything is something that we're still getting to grips with, to be honest. After I've finished recording this little bit, I'm going to put on my knapsack again and just get the fungicide sprayed onto the vines. And incidentally, I'm just experimenting really. I'm doing a few rows with one fungicide, a few rows with another fungicide in different strengths and everything. These first 2 rows behind me, which weren't great for mildew last year, to be honest, I'm going to try the lime sulfur fungicide that I made up in the previous video. I'm going to do it on a 40:1 ratio, so we're going to see how that fares, and I'm going to try different strengths and different products on other rows, just to sort of see what the comparison is, really, just to see if one works better than the other. The fourth problem, it's not necessarily a problem, but the fourth thing that we always have to take into account is how much work it takes to keep the vineyard looking, okay. It can all of a sudden just overwhelm you in terms of the amount of work that needs doing. So just doing a little bit, more often definitely goes a long way. But there's one thing which is definitely worth getting a ride-on mower or a small tractor, and that is the grass cutting. I don't know if you can see this row. I don't know how clearly it comes out on video, but the grass we try and keep cut quite nicely, quite often, because it grows so fast. Now, some of you might wonder, well, why on earth did you put grass on the first place? A lot of vineyards don't bother. They just have soil and weeds coming up and the rest of it. There's 2 reasons why we wanted grass in the vineyard, and that is that if we didn't have grass, we'd get all sorts of weeds growing, which we didn't really want. Things like this, for example. And they can very, very quickly overwhelm young vines because they just grow so tall, and you get loads of thistles and nettles and I don't know, all sorts of stuff really. So we wanted just the whole field just covered in a plant that we can control, i.e. grass, and that just makes life a lot easier for us. And the second reason why we wanted grass is that the type of soil that we've got here, which is a sort of light clay, something like that, as soon as it gets wet, it becomes very, very slippery, and you try and drive tractors and things over it, and it just churns the soil up and just makes a complete mess, and it's just awful. So having a covering on it that can take the water and keep the soil in place and everything just makes working on the vineyard so much easier. So that's why we've planted it for grass. If you're going to put grass in, I'd recommend a slow growing grass, things like fescues and things like that. You don't want to have grass that just goes mad as soon as it gets sunny. This grass is a little bit too fast growing for my liking, to be honest, but you live with what you've got really. So get a tractor that does a cut which is about 1 aisles wide, and then you only have to do 1 pass to do a row. There's nothing worse than if you have to do 2 or 3 cuts, for each row. It just takes you forever, to be honest. So that little Kubota tractor that I've got, that orange tractor that I've got, is absolutely fantastic because you can whiz up and down these aisles really quite quickly, and I can do the whole vineyard, which is about 1 acre, plus the bits at the either end and the headland bits down there. I can do the whole lot in about half an hour, so it's not too much of a chore. So, yeah, keeping on top of grass is a little bit of a chore. Right, number 5 of my little list of problems which I'm anticipating are these wooden posts. Now, we put wooden posts in our first year before we really sort of got to grips as to what we were doing properly, as it were. And you see wooden posts all over the place, especially if you go to the continent and things like that. They use wooden posts everywhere. So we thought, well, we'll use wooden posts. We creosoted them and, all that kind of stuff. But I know for a fact that in probably about 3-4 years' time, they're going to start to fail just because they're constantly in sort of damp clay soil here, and wood isn't going to last. So if I was going to recommend anything, if you can afford it, and if you're going to, you know, do this for the long term, as it were, then I would invest in metal posts. They are so much easier to bang into the ground. They've got these lovely little holes in which you can attach fruiting lines and hooks and all sorts of things to. And they should really last forever. They're galvanized, and even though they are a little bit more expensive, they're a doddle to put into the ground, and they'll last forever. So they are just sort of put in and forget kind of things, really. So wooden posts, they're okay, but I know they're going to be a lot of work when we come to replace them. And lastly, the sixth thing on my list is just generally how much time it takes to look after a vineyard like this. This is about an acre, and there's about 1,000 vines behind me, and it's just the two of us really, and we do all the mowing and all the pruning and all the clipping and all the tying onto the fruiting lines and basically absolutely everything, all the spraying and things like that. And yeah, it can be a bit daunting if you are just faced with looking after 1,000 vines. And unfortunately, vines do need looking after, otherwise they just run amok, and very quickly it just becomes overgrown. So trying to keep it under control is the key. And I would say that this is probably about the maximum that you would want if it's just two of you looking after it. I think if it's just on your own, you'd probably be looking at about 300 vines to look after if you're just doing it yourself. Now, come harvest time, there's absolutely no way you can do this by yourself. There'd be so much fruit to pick off this number, as it were. So you need to get friends and family, or put on Facebook a shout out to anybody that can help, and perhaps give them a few bottles of wine as a sweetener. There's a few things that you just cannot do on your own, and harvesting is one. So get friends and family and as many people as you can, and get loads of trugs and baskets and things like that, because you will need a bit of help in harvest time. Talking about getting help, it's also not a bad idea, if you can, is to get some help when it comes to pruning at the end of the year. So after everything's died back in, say, November, December time, and January for that matter, then if you don't want to do it all yourself, which can be a bit daunting, then maybe get a few friends just to sort of perhaps do a few rows with you, and then that should help get through that sort of task of pruning and getting it all ready for the following year. By the way, if any of you guys have got vineyards and you've got some fantastic methods for keeping mildew and black rot and all this kind of stuff at bay, then definitely put it in the comments below. I'll be fascinated to sort of see what everybody else does. After all, this is a good opportunity to sort of share ideas, isn't it? So put them in the comments. And at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. This was the wine that we made from last year's grapes, and it is 100% Bacchus, and oh, delicious. Until the next video, I'll catch you later. Bye for now.